I realized over a period of time, running a company is a lonely job. Like, and you need someone where you can go and maybe cross-check your thoughts and validate maybe the thoughts, and it helps in terms of taking the right direction. Let me start with the, because you comes with rich experience, and the today the most hot topic is Trump trade and tariff. So is it fair to assume that US seems to want to make a balanced trade and not an import ban? Is that the fair amount of assumption?
Yeah, it's. I think even Trump doesn't know the answer to that question, because you see the changes that is happening in the U.S. administration policies. So, okay, let's go back. We have to just go back. Say, let's go back 40, 50 years. So, उसमें हमने क्या देखा कि especially in the period after 80, mid 80, 84, 85 से जब ग्लोबल ट्रेड में इतना एक्सपेंशन हुआ, so clearly there is, see, Trump has identified a problem. There is a problem, and his problem is not so much about trade, at least, and I think genuinely he believes कि जो communities हैं, if you see J.D. Vance, who is the vice president, उसने किताब लिखी थी Hillbilly Elegy. He has written a book called Hillbilly Elegy, and he has, what hillbillies are, people the US में बोलते हैं ना white trash ऐसे, so they are even worse than the blacks in terms of economic advancement. So very high crime rates, drug use, ये सब, and they have suffered because of manufacturing जो था, US manufacturing, hardcore manufacturing, steel manufacturing, not high tech but auto, steel, textile, ये सब manufacturing में US is almost finished. I mean, they are very, very, so, and there's a problem at the communities. White people have been very badly hit. So he starts that we need to rebuild those communities. We need to create jobs because there were no jobs. You see again that J.D. Vance book. उसने Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Ohio, Virginia, ये सब जहाँ पे steel making industry थी, उसके बारे में ज़्यादा बात करी, and they were all finished. So it's coming from there. Then second thing, yes, he feels that the world has taken advantage. उसमें WTO हो या GATT था या NAFTA जो मेक्सिको, कनाडा, US का agreement था, in सब से the fact is a lot of things are being manufactured and they are much cheaply manufactured in the US. So I think his initial thing is to create jobs within the US. Second thing, is the US competitive now? I mean, if you see iPhone, जैसे iPhone it costs about $1,000, उसका भाव $1,000 में US में बिकता है. I think Wall Street Journal they said if America is to produce iPhone, it will cost $3,000. I mean, there's no way, 3x price, it will cost about 2 lakh rupees, more than 2.5 lakh rupees in Indian terms. It will going to sell in the US. Who is going to buy that iPhone? It's going to be, so the main textiles. I mean, there's no way US is competitive in textiles now.
So there is no sort of taking away that low-end manufacturing will not go to US.
Well, it's very difficult. They will say it is not easy to, I mean, these are supply chains. iPhone, for example, has automotive, chalo, still you can think, but electronic particularly. Supply chain, there are hundreds of suppliers who are specialists in what they do. And that is all in East Asia mostly. Almost all in East Asia. So to say that it'll go to the US, not going to happen. So to answer your question, yes, his base, since that so-called white trash bolne ya jo bhi bolne, I mean the people who believe genuinely our communities have been hit, something has to happen. Trump is trying to do something happen, but there is no way much of the manufacturing can go to the US. But heavy manufacturing, as steel for example, automotive hai. You can certainly make efforts in that, but electronics, textile, even toys, I mean the labor cost. China supplies I think 95% of the world's toys. Even India, all of the toys, come from China. So competition, and there's this economic principle of competitive advantage. So that is there. So some manufacturing will go, but very difficult for a whole lot of manufacturing to go back into the US. But this noise will remain. Noise because he will have support, I mean, he will have backlash or pushback from his base. So I'll tell you, this itself is very funny. अब जैसे परसों न्यूज़ आई कि फ्राइडे को that they are going to allow duty free or lower duty, not duty free but lower duty imports of smartphones, laptops into the US. Now Howard Lutnick जो कॉमर्स सेक्रेटरी है, अब उसने कल फिर बोला कि it is a temporary measure, they will come with a new set of duties. So even there's a it's a very complicated situation. But noise will remain.
But the other counter view is also that because of they have too much of debt, and if they want to refinance that, then you need to have lower yields, and that could only happen when you slow down your economy. Is that counter view is?
Yeah. So there was correct, and this view. So there is a school of thought which is saying that Trump is an economic genius. अब देखो, before he came into this thing, he wanted lower oil prices, he wanted lower yields, he wanted lower dollar. सब कुछ हो गया. You can do all of the same thing with recession. You can do lower oil prices, lower yields, and lower dollar with a recession. So if he can do all this and there is no recession, he's a genius. But I don't think you will get it, without a recession. So, I mean, certainly he has got that, but it's difficult. I think certainly you'll have a recession if the way things go.
So that will also have a demand destruction, and if the demand destruction is there across, then there will be inflationary pressures. Then you have end prices will go up, but that might help the corporate profitability. And if that is the case, is that how do you then look at the capital market in that perspective?
Yeah, if there's a demand destruction in the US, and because the thing is that the China is such a huge manufacturing engine, so that has to find that goods will go somewhere else in the world. So that will certainly have an impact probably in Asia, in India, Europe, all of that. So protectionism, increased deglobalization, increased protectionism certainly is something that we have to live with. India and Brazil, as a for example, why if we say कि हम independence के बाद, we for about 25-30 years till about 90, say 40 years, we were very closed economy. India can afford to be a closed economy. अभी भी हमारा GDP कितना है? हमारा GDP है $4 trillion. We are exporting, not services, goods export is about $420-430 billion. So take 10% of our GDP is exported. It's still a low number. We can do not only because we have a market, we have a big population, also because we have the resources. So we have, say, natural resources. We have, but for energy, we don't have oil and gas, obviously, which we have to import. 90% of that we import. But iron ore, coal hai. Bauxite, not fully, but a good chunk of bauxite we can mine internally. So many things we mine. That's a good thing. That's why we can, not a good thing, but at least we can be a closed economy. So India comes out better relatively. So we will certainly have a, global trade is certainly going to be destroyed. But to your initial point, will it make a, so if there's a demand destruction, sentiment is bad, so I don't see that recovering in a hurry. Because people will conserve cash. People will conserve cash. अभी भी देखो, say for example, last year we sold about 4.3 million cars in India, and this year again, at best, SIAM, which is that Auto Manufacturer Association, is predicting a 1 or 2% growth rate. So, and they see how it is going to play out. So I don't see demand picking up in a hurry. I'm more pessimistic. I think it's all right. Let us, sar salamat to pagdi pachas. It is, important. So at least to preserve capital, preserve cash, and then we will see how things play out. But I think the next year, it is more of, at best, a sideways year. I don't see markets going up in a big way unless things change. Unless, say, Trump says, yes, gradually we open up more, then things are much, and then, people will, because they're so pessimistic, so cynical, things will recover. Otherwise, I think more of a sideways market next year.
So do you think because of this capex or a manufacturing, people are in wait and see how things are shape up, and then people will take a call?
Yeah, see, there are two reasons I think why capex has been, at least talking to businessmen. One obviously is ki China factor, ki China se, supply can come. And risk is actually gone up. That risk has gone up because if China is not finding a big market elsewhere, that may come. But the government has already put in place. They are already, so they may be tracking all that to make it difficult for people to dump. That is one. And second thing I find in India, in industry, many industry, there's been a huge consolidation. Many industries have been a huge consolidation. The top three, cement, for example, ultimate. I mean, no, we'll have 4 or 5 people who are consolidating. In banks, even in, so there's no real consolidation, but within PSU banks, I mean, the smaller banks and the larger banks, you can see the growth rates. So there is across industry, aviation, we have seen that. Telecom, we have seen that.
Telecom,
Steel, so there's, big players are getting bigger. So, and so I don't, so capex, generally the big ones are doing capex. If you see outside of that, say Aditya Birla Group, if you look at that, they have done some capex in paints. Now they are doing some capex in wires and cables, which is a small, though it's a small 2,000-3,000 crores of capex. But for that, you see, but for the major groups, you are not seeing major capex announcements. So I think they all want to, be conservative in capex. So the big ones are going to do capex. Just as an aside, India, a lot of the big capex, people are talking about big capex last 2 years. The biggest capex was Indigo and Air India airplanes. I mean, Indigo had some 400, 500 aeroplanes. Air India had some 300, 400 aeroplanes on order. That was the biggest capex. It's not really a big capex in terms of steel plants and so on and so forth. Not the so-called traditional capex. But telecom capex is almost over. But for 5G, I mean, they are not, even that most capex is behind us. So we are not going to see a lot of capex because of consolidation also.
So there is one question comes in my mind which says that why in spite of strong macros, decent GDP growth outlook and government incentive, private capex is not happening. And most of the analysts, they factor every year some amount of that capex growth. But by the end of the year,
which is, I think, this reason. I think the same reason, China factor and consolidation. So you are seeing capex. Adani, obviously, if you see number of ports, airports, there is capex happening in that part of the business. But yeah, power in renewable energy, for example, that is one area. So you're seeing certain capex in certain parts and pockets, renewable energy. There was some issue renewable energy because of the contracts. People have signed a contract at say 2 rupees 20 paise, 2 rupees 30 paise, and prices of modules and all have come down. So latest contracts are lower prices. People didn't want to take on fresh bids, things of that kind. But that will come back. So renewable energy, aviation, ports, airports, those kind of capex we are going to see. That so-called traditional capex for example, in cement, it's all consolidation. They will see, people are doing capex. It's not that people are not doing capex, but getting limestone mines. So greenfield capex is more difficult. It's more about brownfield capex we are seeing.
So do you foresee Indian economy, whatever you call as a $20-30 trillion economy, maybe in next 20-25 years? Is that foreseeable, or some question comes in your mind?
Say a 4 trillion, so I don't know. In say 20-30 years, 4 trillion to go to a 20 trillion is a 5x, so I don't know what is the CAGR.
$6 trillion economy, if we grow as a 6%, probably in 25 years will be a $16 trillion or $18
so
trillion
at least
economy.
See a nominal growth, these are nominal numbers, right? So a nominal growth of easily say 7-8%. Even if a bad time, say you see a real growth of even say 6%, inflation of say 3%, 3.5%, 4%, you're getting a 10%, nominal, 9% nominal. So I think that, is doable. But in India as an economy, it is the top consuming class and the lower class. I think there's a big gap there. So automobiles, for example, I mean, last year, if you look at two-wheelers and you look at four-wheelers last year, two-wheelers was a good year last year. I mean, surprisingly, it did about 1.8 crores, 1.9, I think 1.9 crores, two-wheelers almost. It's a good growth after a long time. You know, two-wheelers actually were having a very bad time. Now, because the lower people had been really badly hit, so that came back. So hopefully that continues, but I think people are more negative on two-wheelers again. Four-wheelers, we did 4.2 million, 4.3 million. We will do similar probably in FY26, 4.2. So I think that is the dichotomy. You know, difference है कि जो top earning class है, so the, you know, movie tickets, PVRs, high-end malls, high-end clothing, Mercedes-Benz is selling the highest. C class में demand is less. In BMW 3 Series, demand is less. Audi A4 demand is less. It is A6 or Q5 or Q7.
Hatchback is not working with at least. So premiumization.
So it is that, you know, premium end. How long can that premium end consumption drive? So I think that is a concern to me. Ki the broad mass of people, and I think so far we have not seen job losses after AI. AI ke baad, agar suppose there are job losses. For example, at least so far TCS, I think in that result they said they will hire 42,000 people, which is a good number, similar to what they hired last year. So if job losses and is a concern, otherwise, so I think that consumer economy, I'm slightly more cautious. CAPEX, so obviously I told you I'm slightly this thing. Even consumer, the bottom end of the pyramid is hurting, I think. So
I think in our discussion also, I think you were showing some sign of worry on the consumer side, because across the globe also the tech companies are not hiring or maybe reducing the numbers.
yeah, but AI can, अभी तो impact नहीं हुआ है AI का. AI का impact अभी तक तो positive ही हुआ है. I mean, people have not laid off people, except I think one company. I think globally, of course, people have laid off. India में एक fintech company या किसी ने 200-250 लोगों को they laid off because we were going to do some AI work. So that is a concern. If say big people lay off large number of people, तो उसमें क्या होगा? भले ही I am not losing, but I see my neighbor losing his job.
You become conservative.
I become conservative. So we have to be slightly careful on consumers.
So we saw recent at least 15%, 18% on the index level impact. The stocks have fallen maybe more than 25, 30, 40% also. So which sectors do you think looks attractive in terms of valuation and have a reasonable growth, visible growth, despite in uncertain environment what we live in?
तो इस समय I think the consensus trade, and मेरा भी at least be domestic sector oriented. Globally is too much of uncertainty. So domestic, for example, you know, capital goods या consumption, but I think that's a gradually become a consensus in the crowded trade. मतलब सभी का view वही है. तो ठीक है, stocks चलेंगे, but right now, you know, you are protecting capital. I'm not here to make my assets grow as of now. Till such time I get clarity. Even here clarity is difficult. We spoke on CAPEX, we spoke on consumer. So it's not that I can say CAPEX is very good, consumer is very good, I'm buying with conviction. No. I'm buying because it will hopefully give me less losses and sideways. At least I'm not going to lose money on these, hopefully not lose money on these. So I'm keeping my powder dry. जब और कुछ चलेगा, I'll switch into that. So it has to be a domestic oriented trade, and still demand is relatively better there. For example, aviation still is doing good. Global energy prices are down, and very strong player is there who is not. We'll see some competition. As of now, competition still is there. Own 60% market share. Things like that are there. So quite domestic, but वो risk यही है कि consensus trade हो जाएगा, crowded trade हो जाएगा, बहुत लोग उसमें घुस जाएंगे. Then we have to be careful. But as of now, that is the strategy.
I think one should become less aggressive. I think protect preservation of capital.
Preservation of capital, be large cap oriented. Large caps, I think, have become more reasonable. And anyway, as Anup, you know, I have my broken record. Large cap should be 65, 70% of an average investor portfolio. Anyway, be in large cap mostly. Have small cap, mid cap tactically. But large cap, I think, relatively protect your capital.
Even flexi-cap, you find a
Yeah.
place to be.
Yeah, flexi cap, large cap, absolutely. I'd agree with you.
So, Chief, when you look at in a capital markets, you look at maybe fundamentals, liquidity, and sentiment. I think India perspective fundamental. I think there is no problem on that side. I think good corporate balance sheets, good bank balance sheets. But how do you look at maybe a liquidity and sentiment? Sentiment, I think it has broken. What's your view on those? I think these are three legs required to see that animal spirit coming back.
No, I agree. So fundamental and including valuation obviously is one piece. Then liquidity and sentiment. So sentiment is a very, how do you, for example, measure sentiment? You can look at things like stock price performance. People who do technicals, you see a 1 month price over 3 month price, 3 month price over 6 month price. You see the volumes, all those things. But as of now, sentiment is clearly about preservation of capital. And so I have my friends, and some of them who were active in stock trading last year, they all say, यार अभी FD ले लेना चाहिए. People are moving to FDs and safety, bond funds, things of that nature. So sentiment clearly is more for preservation of capital, and liquidity I think is all right, except if FII and RBI has done a good job. I mean, right from January, they have infused more liquidity in the market. I think liquidity is underappreciated. People do not realize the value of liquidity in a market. Companies fail, a business will fail because they have no liquidity. We saw that in all crises, in 2008 crisis, and even before that, if I remember, in the mid 98 to 2000, when East Asian crisis hua tha. So in the market, it's not that companies did not have good business. They had good businesses, but they didn't have liquidity.
Cash.
And LTCM, if you see LTCM, was one of those hedge funds which was founded by Nobel laureates. They had good positions, but they could not meet margins. The thing is that if I had held on to my position, they would have made good money, but they could not, they didn't have enough money to make margin payment. So liquidity, I think, is most important, which RBI has, infused in the market. So liquidity can be because what happens is initially a liquidity crisis can become a fundamental crisis very soon. So your money is locked up with your, जिसको आपने माल supply किया, your debtors, and that money stops circulating, then you become a bad credit immediately.
It creates a survival issue.
It becomes survival. Absolutely. Liquidity, I think, is underappreciated. We don't realize. People look at 10-year bond deals. I tell people, 10-year bond deals are important. But the more important is the 3-month CP rate. You must look at 3-month CP rate, 3-month CD rate is more important for a person. You must look at 10-year bond deals, but 3-month CP rate tells you how the liquidity is. That is more important. For liquidity, you have to keep watching.
And I think you have alluded also, and with your experience, saying that why cash plays an important role.
Cash
I think
is
whether
king.
it's business or whether it's your building portfolio.
Exactly. No, it gives you option. I really realize.
Yeah.
I say, how it know, because there was a friend of mine. He says, "Arey, this stock is looking so good, but I don't have money." So you must have optionality, and there's a value to an option. It's like a call option. Yes, you have paid a premium. Think of it like this. I'm keeping some cash, वो मैंने premium दिया है, ठीक है, उस पे I'm losing 4-5% return, but it's okay. But that is cost of my premium. But it gives me an option. I can buy a stock if it's available.
So Krupa, you are doing a good job. Like throughout the year, she's the one who reminds us every Thursday, saying that please go back and check with the clients whether they have a surplus amount, and ask them to park in a liquid fund or arbitrage fund. Basically, that's what you are alluding.
Correct.
So another question is, like when you look at, maybe this is for a capital market, but when it looks at to a economy, which are the 2 or 3 ingredients are required to have a sort of structural good story on an economy side? Do you need talent or a capital or an infrastructure? Are these 3 combination, or is apart from these 3, which are the 3 combination you think which are very important to roaring economy?
No, I think See the role of government, for example. I think government is a great enabler, you know, and we need infrastructure. I am not one who says the private sector will do everything. You need, good quality infrastructure. See, abhi kya hai ki now government has the PLI policy, and that has made a difference in some sectors. Clearly, it has made a difference. So where the government is there, it is so long it is not choosing the winners and the losers. If you go back 60s, 70s, or 80s, हमारे गवर्नमेंट का क्या होता था कि they will say this technology is okay. When telecom came, you had the GSM and CDMA. You prefer one over. It's not government's role to say you must create environment and get out of the way. So I think government does it, but sometimes also does not do that. They get involved in choosing winners and losers. I think that is, we have enough talent. India has enough talent, but you must, and I think more importantly, I tell you, I was talking to a businessman. Uska saman port se, his factory was in Indore, and his goods had to come from Bombay to Indore. He said, if I know every time it will take 10 days, I have no problem. Sometimes it takes 6 days, sometimes it takes 20 days. That is the problem. For 10 days, I'll build it in my exam. 10 days ka kharcha lagega, one capital, I'm ready for that. But uncertainty jo hai na, so government uncertainty create nahi karna chahiye. They should not be changing rules, regulations every day. And we can see what Trump has done. It is not so much about what he did. People are complaining about every day you are changing. You began with 100, 145, made it 20. Ratnik says it will go up again. That is the problem. You say one number, stick to that number. Whatever it is, then we'll work around that. You don't change too much. So government, I think in India also, for example, since 2018, we have added so many new, import duties, quality control orders. Yes, sir. Well, too much of change is happening. So that you should avoid. Baki talent we have, good quality. Skilling is an issue, but government is doing work on that. So broadly, I think government is doing a lot of good work, but generally don't make it too much of volatility in their regulations.
Capital and I think infra is also building a pace in the country.
Yeah, I think one thing that we see, if you see the number of VC and the number of private equity funds and willing to put money, you can say ki what kind of business they are funding. But if you have a good idea, I think normally money is not an issue. About talent is an issue really for that. So money, I don't see that as a major challenge. And infra, I think generally our infra is in a good, it's improving. See, India is, I know this is a joke, but somebody a friend of mine, so it's a true story. He had gone to Punjab, so he was talking to his he's a seeds company, CEO of a seed company. He was talking to his distributor there, and the distributor's son was playing. So ऐसे ही उसने पूछा कि what is 7 into 8? He gave answer of 64. So the guy ने कहा, father is very done, well done. उसने कहा तो गलत आंसर बताया. How can you say no? Till yesterday it was 72. It has improved. So India is not perfect. It is improving. So you can't say I'll get the perfect answer. Our infra is not perfect. It was much worse. It is much better now. So that is the mindset we need to have. Things are better.
Interesting. So I think I think you tracked in the market so long. So market is a slave of earnings. Yeah. And ultimately stock returns are mirror of what that profit growth the company does basically. So do you think maybe next 10 years from here to 2035, India can have a 10-12% earning growth? And if that is the case, where you could see a Nifty? Maybe 1 lakh? Is that?
Yeah, see, if you say, yes, it's a number, you can do a CAGR on that, but certainly a Nifty earnings growth of say at least low double digits.
Quite possible.
Quite possible. And one thing, if you see, when I came to the markets in 1989, there was no Nifty at that time. There was the Sensex. And I think I don't remember, I'd done some exercise some time back. After those 30 companies, I think 12 or 13 have gone out. They've totally finished. Usme Stan Rose Apparel, Mafatlal Industries, and Century Enka, not textile. Century Textile is just gone. It's just, So there's so many companies.
Textile is not there in the index itself.
It's not there.
That was, I think, index itself was having
Yeah.
40% share of the textile.
So it's totally changed, and now a totally new kind of companies have come. So index is also a somewhat, there's a so-called survivorship bias, जो बोलते हैं ना. So the better companies come part. So people who are doing much better. So looking at that, certainly you will see that kind of earnings growth from these kind of companies. So yes, you can see low double-digit earnings growth. Yes, certainly. So broadly GDP, but one thing I have seen, and I myself is quite surprised, there is little correlation between GDP growth and stock market performance. It comes, the lag and lead is quite meaningful. Lag and lead is very, China ko dekho. I mean, China itself for a long time, the market was a total, GDP was bouncing, but performance was bad because there was no FII flow. People were worried about government intervention in the economy. Many things were going wrong. So GDP was like this, market was like this. So other conditions, so GDP growth is certainly one component, not the only component. But it's an important component, but the other things will determine. So liquidity, obviously, that you referred to, quality of corporate governance, so all those things come into play, which is why it's an enabling factor, but not the only. Suppose you say have good GDP growth, but too much of crony capitalism, too bad corporate governance, market will not go anywhere. So only GDP growth will
corporate
not
return
suffice.
profile also were not good, many countries basically.
Yes, many things. So, so India comes out very well. Good, generally good accounting, good regulators proactive. I mean, by and large, I think they're doing a good job. SEBI, RBI, they do a good job. All these things matter. So they are important. GDP is an enabler, but it's say probably a 40% in that. If you make a regression equation, so GDP का 40% आएगा. बाकी सब चीज़ों का भी importance रहेगा.
You said that you started your career in maybe 1979-80 before
89.
Oh, great. So what factors have led to an increased interest in the game of capital market?
I think it is, see, one is...
Did you started, you were in maybe in your undergrads or maybe your 10th, 12th, like that sort of. Did you thought one day?
Never. So in my time, and I come from not Bombay, I am from, UP. उस समय तो stock market, there was IPO होते थे. IPOs would happen and some shares would get allotted. My father got some shares and so on. So I had some, but not much of earning. But I'll tell you broadly, your question is what has led to interest in capital market across the market? My interest,
is it accidental or
it just happened accidentally. But I tell you, what is the best part of being in the capital markets? I tell you what I really think as a mutual fund manager, particularly. One is you meet very smart people. I mean, including you, Anup, for example.
I say that.
No, but generally, I said I have met so many smart businessmen. You meet, I mean, really, that is the best part of my being a mutual fund manager. I have met so many smart CEOs, not everybody is smart, but some people who are exceptional, who really are. And not only in CEOs, people in related fields, that is one good, I think that is the best
peer
part.
Groups also. What
in peer group, such smart thinkers. I think I think the worst use of your time as a mutual is sitting in your office. Yes, you want to be in your office, but you got to meet people. And I met so many distributors, so many smart distributors, actual real life distributors, not only financial distributors of products, company managers, peer groups. I mean, that has been and there are some very, very smart, even owner managers. See, there are, India, we said we want to go to the professional way. Yes, you can go to the professional way, which is that you divorce management from ownership. So people say we'll get, but there are some very smart owner managers, and who have done a great job. So I think that has been the blessing. That's really been a blessing.
Any example comes in your mind which you think are...
owner managers, I think there are 4 or 5 exceptional people. Greet Bharat Sheth, GE Shipping, Rajiv Bajaj at Bajaj Auto. Sanjeev, of course, when I met him earlier, he was low profile, he was CF handling the finance function, and a great job. So, there are people, Aditya Puri, he was not an owner, but he almost ran it like an owner. See, there's a big difference, I tell you. You know it who's smart, because these people, and suppose you ask him a question, his CFO is sitting. He doesn't need to ask the CFO to tell him the answer. He knows it as good as the CFO or the IR. He knows more about his company. He doesn't need to ask. Aditya Puri ko, he didn't have to ask, so yes, number bata do. He knows the numbers. Rajiv ko, you don't know, Bharat Sheth, for example. The others, I can't think of immediately, but I'm sure there are many other people who are on the ball. So they can't be led by their management team. But on the other hand, you have owner managers, and whom I will not name, but who are, he will not know the company. He will depend on, yaar ye kya ho raha hai, CFO se पूछेगा. I mean, those are the people are not on top of the game.
But I completely echo with your thoughts. This is one profession where you meet smartest of the minds. At least for me, it's a smartest of the mind. Like people, I meet people like you, who comes with a good background, good educational background, good experience background, and thinking is you get a different perspective altogether.
Yeah.
You meet a lot of businesses, so you understand a lot of businesses also.
Absolutely, been a lot of businesses. So, I mean, that's been we just came by chance. It's just by chance. Even Prashant Jain, for example, we talked to Prashant, so great guy. But by chance, he got posted to the mutual fund because you could have gone to some other business. So, it is just by chance.
So, how to be a good investor? Can it be learned?
At least you can learn to avoid mistakes. I think that is, it is, we spoke about patience, doing diligence. I tell you, it's conviction. When do you get conviction in your call? When you have done good homework. We just spoke, Anup, that, I have seen fund managers who've done a good analysis of a company, and then he will buy 0.1% in his portfolio. Why? If you are convinced, you must buy at least 1.5%, because he does not have conviction, because you have not done enough work. तो उसमें क्या होता है? You become a weak hand. Stock, I did it. I give an example. Stock went up 30% because I had not done enough work. I sold, and stock went up after that again because I had not done enough work. So you must do enough work in your. So no, that is important. Being patient and realizing when you have made a mistake and cutting losses. We sometimes own our mistakes. उसके बाद क्या होता है कि बेचने में, there's a big difference. What is a long-term investor? What's a long-term investment? A short-term investment gone wrong is a long-term investment. And what is a strategic investment? A long-term investment gone wrong is a strategic investment. That's what happens to fund managers. I bought something for short-term, it went wrong, now I'm holding up what is a long-term ho gaya. My story has changed. The reason I bought it is not the reason I'm holding it now. And then, it's down now 50%, 60%. Now I dare not sell it. Itna loss book karna pad jayega. So, all those. So it is about having conviction, doing good work, being patient. Don't try to do many things. At least I believe, do few things well. In investment, do few things well is, I think, very important. You can't have, do everything very well. So you have funds who have a clear philosophy. I will do that only. I will not, in all markets I will not do well. But in this market, overall I'll do well. This is my philosophy. So I think that is important. So all those things. You can learn. To answer your question, you can certainly learn. You can learn to avoid mistakes, be patient, and that will you'll do better than, the index.
I moved when you say I'm still learning and I'm still student of the market. I think if at your age you are still student of the market in front of these people.
No, I tell you seriously, and I mean it. I'm not being humble. It is, I never say I am right. I say I'm not wrong yet. So many things. We always said, trade. People will never go back on trade. I mean, you are seeing that happening now, right? So many things we took for granted will not change, are changing in front of our eyes. So you have to be nimble to understand things have changed, and we have to adjust. So things we took for granted forever are not true. For example, US versus Europe. Did you think that US and Europe would be having some sort of difference of opinion? I mean, there are things that you never took for, you always believed, and that's changing before us.
See, many times when I take interviews of the young candidates, many times they come with so much confidence, they know everything. and it's very difficult for me to explain them ki boss, I met a lot of people who comes with 30 40 years of experience and still they say that ki I have still lot to learn. It's very difficult that people knows everything else. uh, Another, as an investor or as an investment specialist, as in the role which I play, like there is a lot of information is available, is there. How do you, my question is, how do you select and what to read and what to avoid, like at least to optimize the time?
I agree entirely. I mean, that is a challenge. So much of CNBC, we are keeping it. And you know, information has exploded. Our minds have not changed. See, our minds have developed over millions of years, or say humans came about 3 lakh years ago onto the world. So our mind is not adapted so fast to adjust all this. So it goes back to the earlier question about do few things well. And one of the questions when I used to hire analysts was to understand their use of the day. How did they use their day? Because so much of information is available. How do you decide what to do? You cannot do everything. So it has to tie in with what your process is. Okay, what's your process? How you're looking at companies. Then you have to, your information, jo aap dekhoge. If suppose I'm a momentum guy, then there's nothing wrong in watching CNBC. If I'm doing momentum, yes, that is my strategy. There's nothing wrong in that strategy. Then I'm not doing company, I'm not reading annual reports. I'm not doing all of that. I'm doing momentum, which is perfectly fine. So it is how you are managing money. So to answer your question, you have to look at what is your investment philosophy and how you manage money. With that it goes. So if I'm a fundamental guy, I have to read annual reports. Okay, but generally I think what works well, see, because you can be a fundamental long-term investor, but NAVs are, people are watching NAV on a daily basis. So almost 90% of mutual fund managers are Valmo, combination of valuation plus momentum. So, fundamentals plus momentum, you need both, and there's nothing wrong in that, because you can be there for 5 years, but you'll have no money to manage, because you'll lose all your money. I'm a long-term investor karke. So you look at, and the good way to see is improving fundamentals. So you must see companies where fundamentals are improving. You must see attractive relative valuation. So companies which are doing relatively, there's nothing, see, in a market which is expensive, nothing is cheap, but at least relatively which is better, you focus in that part of the market. And then thirdly, investors are willing to invest in that company. You can have a cheap company with improving fundamental, or it's too small, or whatever, corporate governance is bad, nobody is interested. So those three things generally, if you get them right, then generally you will do. So you have to focus on picking that stocks in your portfolio.
Couple of times you told that there are few things one has to focus rather than doing multiple things basically.
Absolutely.
Can you elaborate that? I think this is what I'm saying, my team also, okay, let's not do too many things.
Yeah.
Let's do only few things, but do it far better.
Correct.
Rather than becoming jack of all trade, master of none, just
Absolutely.
make sure that you focus on one thing.
Correct. I totally, and I don't know if I mean, it's my example of Kapil Sharma, that I gave earlier to you. I think we all know Kapil Sharma is a great comic. Now, he wanted to become a film actor. He's a great guy. He's a king of what he does in comedy. He went into film acting, he failed. Now, film I think, actually good film, I also saw one of his films, that Zwigato. He was a hero in that movie. But where is he now? He is the king of what he does, he should remain there. So if I'm good in what I do, just do deeper. There are people who do everything thoda. Usse acha hai, ab jo karte ho, usko ab deep karo na. People recognize you. I tell you the biggest problem with fund managers is people will ask you, what do you stand for? I think, if you see RFP hota hai, the request for proposals, that you have to fill. And it's very difficult question to answer. There are two questions which difficult I find for fund managers to write. What do you stand for? You can't stand for everything. I think that is the problem. So you can't say, I'll do well here, I'll do momentum, I'll do this, I'll do. No, it cannot work like that. And second is, what's my self-discipline? That's the second question people find difficult to answer. So to go back to initial point, you must do few things, and that depends on who you are. There's nothing wrong with momentum. There's nothing wrong like Saurabh Mukherjee, who says, I don't care, I'm long-term investor, it's perfectly fine. But there should be alignment between your investor and yourself, or both will be unhappy.
One more thing I think we talked also, and then I think you touched that point also. I think when you have a confidence, like whatever you do, then that sizing of that portfolio becomes an extremely important
Truly.
also. Buying that 10,000 rupees will not help you.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
so,
yes. I
like,
agree. Sizing, I find many small investor, मैंने वो share खरीदा, कितना खरीदा, 100 share लिया. अरे even become a multi-bagger, कितना रुपया बन गया? That you bought 100 shares of something, it has gone up 5 times, you made no money. So how much sizing of the portfolio is very important. So a lot of investors who are buying stock or buying in mutual funds also, if I have a say 10 lakh rupees ka portfolio, I have put 50,000 rupees in equity, okay, it has done well, but how much money I have made in that? So, sizing of the portfolio is, I think, as important. And again, my favorite example, you have 10 stocks, you give to 2 fund managers, and they can build totally different portfolio. Somebody has 8% Infosys, somebody has 2% Infosys, somebody has 4% TCS, somebody has 8% TCS. You get different portfolios. So sizing, I think, matters a lot in your returns. So equity investors, I find this is a big problem. People will say equity, but I have one mutual fund which is say 10,000 rupees. So even if you do very well, you have taken a good fund, but kitna 10 will become 30,000. In overall portfolio, it doesn't move the needle.
okay. So if the people who are maybe in their 30 or 35, and if they have a free time, how do they should use their free time? Is there any advice you would like to give them?
No, I can't give advice to young people. They know more than us. I mean, I really young people know everything there is to know. Google Baba is there. All the AI is there. Perplexity is there. So all the answers are known. It is not about the answers. I think everybody has all the answers. It is the discipline. I think in portfolio management also, everywhere in life also, it's the discipline. How is known to everybody. For example, I'll tell you, does everybody not know we must exercise? Everyone knows we must exercise. Everyone knows I must take control of my diet. Everyone knows that. Does everyone know you have to take care of your diet? Yes. How many of us do that? It's about doing. It's a discipline. So not about telling what to do. It's the discipline. I'll tell you, now people will, my age, they will have a particular life, and one day you have a heart attack, and suddenly your lifestyle changes. Suddenly you become more disciplined, control diet, do exercise. You knew it all the time. ऐसा नहीं कि डॉक्टर ने को बताया कि तुमको ये करना चाहिए. So I think all of us know it. I think there's no answers I can tell them. They know all the answers. It is about doing. So that is discipline, I think, all of you guys.
How do we, I think the research also proved that the 90 or 90+% returns is based on your asset allocation and very less on the stock selection basically. So how do you derive, clients toward this asset allocation, and how do we navigate between this greed and fear? Is there anything?
No, which is exactly ties to what I said earlier. Asset allocation, because say you have an equity fund and you put 50,000 rupees in the equity fund, so how does it matter if the equity fund does or a stock does very well? So I think for 90-95% of clients, Anup, I go back to my simple formula. 65%, okay, first of all, how much is equity and debt? That you have to say at least 50% should be in equity. Most people at young age can't take that much of a risk. 50% at least should be in equity. And of that 50%, at least 65% should be in large caps. Rest you can have, if you want, small cap, mid cap, thematic, offshore investing, everything. But 65 should be that core equity portfolio. Because what happens in a good time, okay, there will be sense of omission. Okay, I will not do the best, I will do slightly worse. But in a bad time, the investor will be very badly hurt. As the last 6 months, for example, if I had 40%, 50% in, 60% in small cap, investor is going to, be very disappointed. And there's a difference between temporary setback and permanent damage. Agar aapka, in a bull market, you don't do very well, it's a temporary setback. I will lose I'll make 2% less return. But if I have too much of risk in my portfolio, it's a permanent damage. He'll run away. He'll go to bank FD only.
Do do SBI FD, I
He
think.
will do he will not come into, which is the bigger problem. So it is again the same problem in investment also. Why do people lose money? As fund managers also, you know, if you can buy a good quality stock at high valuation on a poor quality stock at low valuation, I rather buy the good stock at high valuation because I may have time damage. Suppose when somebody holds a gun to my head, कि वो company बंद तो नहीं हो जाएगी. If I have a very poor quality, I'm not a really bad quality company at 2 PE multiple, that company will shut down for all I know. So it is, temporary versus permanent is what we have to see. So if you make a bad call, it can permanently damage your portfolio.
So what are then your investment do's and don'ts?
Uh, no, I think I'm learning still is being more patient, be diverse. I'm I think an ideal mutual fund investor. I hardly take out my money. My money is in mutual funds and some of it's through you, and you have seen I have not churned my portfolio a lot. That portfolio remains. Some of it is not doing so well. I'm all right to remain in that. So I think we underestimate the power of compounding. We underestimate the power of compounding. So if you just remain there, I think for most people, I think your PF can be one of the best returns. Simply because I'm getting 8% compounded every year without a bad year. So I'm getting 8% every year, 8, 10, 8, 5, whatever it is the government is giving, I'm getting it every year without losing. I think that's a great compounder. And suddenly after 30, 35 years you realize I've got a good corpus in PF. So we underestimate the power of compounding. Including myself, when I see my PF, I worked for a long time, and then you see that I never took my money, it just grown. It made a big difference. So we underestimate the power of compounding, power of patience, not looking at others' portfolio. I'm seeing somebody else. It's good to know what somebody else is doing. Don't try to be like him. I mean, your mind, you are you. You have to be the best version of what you can be. I don't have to be the best Anup. Anup doesn't have to be the best Rajat. So listen to other people, but don't try to, be what they are trying to do. I'll tell you, I was in Malad local. I used to travel a lot in Malad local to Churchgate earlier. And in that train, nobody lost money. किसी को भी, लोग आता रहा सब market वाला. अच्छा, उस stock में 20% बनाया. But yesterday now stock is down 10%. वो मैंने बेच दिया पहले. So people will never give you what losses they are making. They will all give you the best stories. That is the problem. So don't try to be what everybody is making losses. You have to have your own goals. I think ma'am said earlier. Have your own goals, stick to your goals. I think that works well.
So I used to run, still running almost 99% portfolio is in mutual fund. And then I met you also, and then I know personally also, and you said now also you run your 99% portfolio in mutual fund and hardly you keep. That also you keep because, you want to keep yourself busy. Isn't that it's not that you are not capable in terms of managing your stock portfolio. You have done that from multi-decades. On the other hand, I see many investors who do not have time, who do not have capability also, but still building portfolio like left, right, centers. And at least in last 6 months, I have seen portfolio where the stocks are 100 stock to 400 stocks are in portfolio. So can you give your own thoughts why you chose mutual fund vis-a-vis not having a direct stock portfolio despite having experience, capability, everything else?
No, I have see what happens is, you talk to people and exactly what I said earlier, people will give you the best stock. I had to go to Delhi, as a distributor meet ke liye. So people will say, मैंने वो stock लिया, I bought a stock which went up 5 times. But you must have bought 5 other stocks. Uska performance kya hai, we don't know. So, it is as a fund. Once I left as a mutual fund 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. You see the quality of information I have and the information the mutual fund managers have. It is a big difference. I mean, they are much more, on the ball. They know what is happening in the market. I don't have that information. So I can do something, but I cannot match them in terms of knowledge and information. So I leave it to them. It's very difficult. And somebody who has I have a 15 stock portfolio is difficult for me to manage. I can look at 15 stocks with 17 stocks. Uske zyada it becomes very difficult. So 100 stocks, I can't believe that somebody can have a 100 stock portfolio and manage that. It's not possible at all. To unless, and even if you're not doing, even if you're doing it full time, you cannot manage.
Even at the AMC level, your universe were how much? 200, 300
Yeah, you
stocks?
can have 250, 300, out of which I will choose 60 stocks, 50, 60
Like
stocks.
somebody is owning a 400 stock. It's
Not
something.
possible, impossible. Yeah, sizing. I mean, how much you have 400 stocks, the top holding may be say 0.5%. तो वो क्या अंतर पड़ता है? Even multi-bagger, it makes no difference. So you have to have concentrated, not two, but at least some concentration.
So if you were to teach an inspiring fund manager one concept that you think is often overlooked in the textbook or in courses, what would be that?
Um, there are many. First of all, okay, fund managers, okay, the difference between fund managers and analysts. See, in a fund house, you will have analysts who typically become fund managers. So what happens is the analyst's job is to give buy recommendations. I find where analysts and fund managers fail. A fund manager who was an analyst earlier, he's giving buy. He doesn't know when to sell. And the portfolio sizing. I think the portfolio sizing is a big, but outside of that, fund manager should know what is the source of value in a company. To understand the company, where is the value coming from? Say, Hero Honda, I'll give an example of Hero Honda. So when, it was Hero Honda, before it became Hero Motors, they were both, and they did a great job. But once they split, the performance of Hero Motors as a stock has not been what it was when it was a Hero Honda, because competition has increased. So what we really thought, it's a great company, yes, it was a great company, but a lot of tailwind was because of technology that you were getting, which is not what it was at that point of time. So you have to know what is the source of value in a company. You must understand those key things. As a fund manager, you have 60 stocks. You can't be on top of 60 stock. You will depend on analyst. But you must know what questions to ask. उसमें भी uncertainty बहुत ज़्यादा होता है. So you must know कि source of value कहाँ से आ रहा है, वो समझना है मेरे को. For example, it could be, Indigo के case में lower fuel prices, market share, or whatever it is, my cost in, sale and lease back or whatever. Those things you must know. Top 5 or 6 things you must understand in a company. Don't get lost in, there are many things you can do, but top 4 5 things you must be on top of in all the companies in your portfolio.
Did you also notice that in good times bad news get ignored, and in bad time the good news get ignored, and how that cost basically as an investors?
Yeah, so you have that in a in a bad time, in a good time, bad news certainly gets ignored. We have seen that. The bad news, I mean, that's, you just at the back of your mind, your market is doing too much now. The kharab news aaya, stock is up, okay, 3%, 2%. I mean, they have to be careful about that. So you have that always happens, especially in a bad, and that is a good buy signal. Other way around, in a bad time, good news gets ignored. That's good, wonderful. So you watch for it, and then look at it as a potential buy signal. It happens.
So I think you have led the people also. Is there one thing you will maybe, as a leader, you can maybe?
Yeah, I think communication. I think most important thing in a team, in investment team particularly, is communication. See, because some analysts, a team of 6 analysts, 4 fund managers, say everybody is meeting somebody. But idea is to share that information and act on information fast. I'll give you a live example. We had an analyst who had gone to Delhi very long time back in 2006, 7 or something, and he met a company, and that company was giving such a genuine, story on his company, how things were changing. He immediately from there he talked to my other analysts to do work on that quickly. And then our analyst did the work on that, and within a day we had a theme, or at least a reason to buy that 1 or 2 stocks, and that stocks made a lot of money for us. So people working, it's not rocket science. Investment teams which don't do work well are investment which work in silos. I think that doesn't work. So communication, and I think principle mein, And I think other fund houses also. They used to build platforms, technology, because principal had people sitting in Tokyo, in Sydney, in London, in New York, all places. But how do you put them all together? So communication platforms are very, very important. How do you communicate? So in investment team, so when I hire also, when you hire also people who share information, I think that is, because I don't know everything. If I say something, other guy, I may be bullish, but you may ask me 2 or 3 questions. I'm not saying just to run me down, but genuine, and that may cause me to think, vice versa. If I'm too bearish, and then you can ask me some questions. So I think small teams working together, I think professional investment, that makes a big difference.
What is your view on giving back to the society?
I think, all of us, I think we are in some ways trustee. I think Mahatma Gandhi said it, I think very well, that a businessman is a trustee. No, why do we need businessmen? Because businessmen are supposedly the most efficient people who channelize society's savings and deliver something out. The government can also do, but government does it inefficiently. Generally government can also tax people and distribute the money. Government doesn't do it very well. So businessmen, they can produce the best things out of that and then they give it. So I think the big examples, Azim Premji Foundation, Shiv Nadar, all those people, Tatas, all of them, Bajaj, there's so many big businessmen, and we all of them, including in my own way at a small level, we also do. But the thing is, I can do probably by teaching people or so on and so forth, helping people learn English, things of that kind. But I think businesses, because they produce capital in the most efficient way and they can give back. I think we are seeing more and more of that in India. Traditionally, it used to be businessmen used to always do, but that used to be, say, temples and things of that nature. Now it is more broad-based, and we are seeing that. And going beyond CSR, it is not only at 2% of profits in CSR, much beyond that. So government can also do it, but businessmen can do it much more efficiently.
Any good advice from your maybe mentors or from parents or from peers which stayed with you?
I think there's so many. I can't, but one immediately, comes to me. It came from Verma ji. Mr. M.S. Verma was later chairman of State Bank of India. And so this was in life. So he says, if you have bad news, immediately share you have a piece of good news, you have a piece of bad news. As the manager, I want to know the bad news first. In a company which is open, it's a communication. Company which is open communication, you can't hide bad news. The problem is, if you're hiding bad news, that bad news will become very bad news. I'll give you another example, live example of that. But so, if you are because you're working in a professional setup, tell the bad news to your manager immediately. Kuch ho gaya na, it's become his problem. He told me it's become my problem. I have to help you solve it. Goodless, okay, I'll name a company, Goodless Nerolac, had and I know because one of my colleagues used to work in Goodless Nerolac earlier. In Pune branch, so they had supplied some paint to Bajaj Auto, and many years ago, like 30, 40 years ago, they had supplied some paint, and somehow Bajaj, a quality issue was there. Bajaj had returned that paint to, अब उन लोगों ने जो Pune branch manager was afraid. He didn't bring the paint anyway, so he kept the paint in his warehouse. So no one knew what was happening. And then, he didn't tell people that the mal has come back. They didn't reverse the invoice. So it became a bad debt. In the company's books, it's a bad debt. Bajaj had returned the money. It was just sitting. That became a time bomb. So, the bad news has to immediately be circulated. I think because then people can solve it as a problem, as a group. Came from Mr. Verma. He was a mentor to me, and he said it. There are many other, things that come, but that immediately comes to mind. Bad news, don't give the bad news. Let people, and I think the CEOs, it comes from the CEO. He cannot, you can have a CEO who said, don't bring the bad news. Then he should be prepared for the bad news, for very bad news. So he should encourage people, as an employee also, but on the other side, as an employee, I will say, don't only go to the CEO with bad news. Then you are known as the problem guy. ऐसा भी नहीं होना चाहिए. You must keep communication open, but at least bad news, don't hide the bad news.
this I said to my daughter as well as my team member also कि हमेशा ना करने के बहाने नहीं होने चाहिए,
हाँ.
करने के बहाने भी होने चाहिए ना.
Yeah.
Good, interesting. Thank you. So I think what I realized, Chief, and one is the humbleness, like, and humbleness in many ways. Let's say suppose whenever I interact with you, when you say कि I'll come in 30 minutes, and I've seen you are there in 30 minutes. Most of the time I wanted to come, but you say that no, I'll come and I'll see you and I'll come. Today also you were on time, like maybe 2 minutes earlier. How important this quality is when you look back on a career perspective?
No, I think I said it last time. You know, your credibility is all you have as a person, and small things. No, you can managers can give all the gyan. We must do this. We must be nice to people, and I'll give you okay. Again, example comes to me. A friend of mine, he was in my batch in IIM Ahmedabad. And a very senior person known, I am sure, to everybody in the financial sector. That company had gone to IIM Ahmedabad for campus interview. So in campus interview, they are giving presentation. So he was giving presentation. So he was saying, in our company we care for people. और उस समय ना, this was 1989. So there was no PPTs and all that. So there was OHP होते थे. If you remember ना, overhead projectors. We had to put a slide, and you have to move the slide. So this person, very senior man, I mean respected man in the industry, he was, and lot of the batch was convinced. I am on the baat ki we must apply to this company. It's a great financial sector company. We must go. And that slide was slipping, and that उसके साथ में, उनके साथ में his GM or somebody was there. इसको ऊपर करो. He told him, कि ऊपर करो. Like as you talk to a very, so people switched off immediately. So what you say and what you do. I mean, this gentleman is a nice guy, but the moment he said that, the class switched off. You say, I am listening, and your boss, I mean, you are a very senior man sitting there, so you talk to him like that. I mean, the class just went off. That's the difference it makes between what you say and what you do. So it is, small things make a difference. If you are, these are small habits. Be on time. Another, this was reading. Vijay Mallya was once trying to sell something to Hindustan Lever. I think his jam business or something. And Mr. Ashok Ganguly was the Unilever chairman at that point of time. And I think Mr. Ganguly had gone to meet Vijay Mallya, or I think vice versa, sorry. But whatever, Vijay Mallya was half an hour late. So Ganguly went to meet him in his office, he was not there. So I mean, how does it reflect? It doesn't give a good impression about you. So things like timeliness, first of all, if you don't make a promise. But if you make a promise, meet that promise. There's nothing like promising something and not doing it. I mean, that is the worst thing that you can do. So small things make a difference.
One thing also comes in my mind when in a professional setup, and maybe when you meet maybe a highly intellectual people, you can't make a mistake because you might not get a second chance also. Is that true in your experience?
No. Say people will give you, so even companies, so once they start with a fresh person, they will not give him a big response. A business that he can fail, I'm giving you you can fail, it's okay, we'll pick it up. So you can get a second chance provided your intentions are, it's a genuine mistake. If it's a genuine mistake, people will not hold it against you. ऐसा नहीं है. But you can't make the same mistake 2-3 times. अब कहीं जाने का है, मैं आज नहीं गया, something happened, so okay, I didn't go tomorrow, then obviously people will ask you. So you can make one mistake, it's a genuine mistake, people will overlook that, but at least don't make the same mistake again and again. So people will give you chances. I don't think that is an issue. Certainly people will give you enough chances, but so long it's a genuine mistake. But can't we keep making mistakes all the time?
Will you able to share the most important decisions in your life that has turned, and maybe it has turned the trajectory of your life?
Yeah, it is. It's not that some of it happened by chance, but you have to be prepared to pick up that chance. This golfer was there, I think Arnold Palmer or something. He said something beautiful. The more I practice, the luckier I get. So it is, yes, chance will come, everybody gets a chance. Thing is, how many of us are prepared and ready to accept what happens with that chance? Suppose, my boss has made a presentation to give to the board, and that day the boss is not able to make it. Can you make the presentation to the board if you are ready? So you get a great chance to, immediately show yourself. Things like that. So you have to be ready. So another thing I always say in elevator pitch, it's like you meet the CEO in the elevator. So and people will ask, क्या चल रहा है? How are things? Then you can say, हाँ sir, ठीक चल रहा है. Or you can give him a 1 minute key, what am I doing? So in your mind, always be ready. Key, what you are doing today. And so another, when I joined SBI, Mr. D. Basu was the MD of SBI CAP. He later became chairman, Deepankar Basu. He became chairman of SBI. Now he asked somebody, hey, how are you? How are things? What are you doing? So he said, sir, right now I'm coming from the toilet. So this guy was coming, I mean, it was funny, but he could have given something from that. It is like that. So you get so many chances. It is how you use that chance. So be ready to at least some questions we will ask you. So at least be ready with some answers. The typical key, how are things? What are you doing? I think that helps. Yeah.
So one one differentiation what I can see from the younger generation to maybe this generation is basically you are still working. Working in the sense, not in a comfortable, you stick, make a efforts, do something basically. And people are still, the youngsters are planning for their fire, like maybe the financial independence and the retired early sort of, what is your maybe take on that? And what advice or maybe views you can share the people who are sitting here? Maybe more often youngsters basically.
Yeah, I think, see, again, I would say youngsters are, I know my own daughters. I mean, they are much smarter than I was at their age. I mean, I look at myself when I was at their age and where they are. I mean, they know, it's a lot to know, and they already know. And because luckily they are in the right field, they are in the financial services field. They are already giving advice to other people. So it is, learning beats intelligence. I think that is very important. I'll give an example. I was talking to Anup earlier. We have always seen, say, some boy or some girl was with us in college. And we say, he was with us or she was with us. Look at where they have reached now. Yes, they were probably not as smart as I was, but they kept learning. So I think learning beats intelligence. So we have to keep learning new tricks or learning new things every day. I think that is, and I'm not saying I have got it. I read people who are reading every day. I don't do that. I wish I could do that. People who are reading every day, learning new things every day. I know people in my age, they learn so much about AI, different, all ChatGPT, Perplexity, everything. I mean, they are really good. So in my batch of, and in my group, there are people who are really smarter. So I think I really take it from them. Yeah, these guys are doing, I should also do that. So people who are learning, I think they are advantage. So you must keep learning. Of course, you're in the right place. You are already in a company which is telling you about, investment in the right way. Don't get taken in by what is hot. Be consistent, be long term, be patient, but keep learning. I think that is very important.
I think education is extremely important in the journey of life, but what education don't teach you?
No, I think soft skills, it is, and especially, I have seen my best analysts. Say I had 2 or 3, say my best analysts, and I have worked with say 30, 40 analysts. And the best analysts were those who had great, soft skill, matlab conversation. Ki I have 2 analysts going to the company, and one guy can get more information out. Simply how they talk, sometimes how they revert. Siddharth Mota, I mean, one example. वो एक analyst था मेरा. Company will say he wants information, he'll give it immediately. How fast you react, things like that. So doing those small things, soft skills, I think is very important. Education तो है ही है. I mean, you must see. You have to do basic, you have to know annual report reading, financials, all that is given. But I think soft skills, and when your promotion, when it comes to, when you're promoting people, I think that makes a very, big difference. So education wise, so communication skills are very important, presentation skills, I think they are very, very, very important.
Is there a thought comes in your mind that I wish I knew certain things 30 years back?
Oh yes, oh yes, there is. Um, no, for example, the, I mean, so always after the mistakes, you wish that I had not made. I wish I had not made this mistake. I wish I had not made this mistake. But the importance of doing the small things, I think the importance of knowing, doing due diligence. When you're reading annual reports, for example, at least I always like to do that. But I find that people take shortcuts. I think, and I myself, sometimes you decide. So for me, easy to say do few things well. It's a learning that's come to me after a long time. Earlier we used to do everything, you know. So वो मैं बाद में खुद सीखा है. So I wish I knew that do few things well much earlier. Now I say it is right, but at least I myself knew it after a lot of experience, unfortunate experience actually.
कोई ऐसा डिसीजन या कोई ऐसी like maybe the action you did which maybe मतलब you can call it as a mistake in the past which you think it's applicable in life as well as in profession and which you would like to pass it on to people so they should not repeat the same. Is that anything comes in your mind?
I There's so many mistakes, one makes. I think, see, it is, as the manager, I will say, there's a difference between delegation and giving up responsibility. So you delegate, but does not mean you have given up responsibility. You are still responsible. So when you delegate, so first of all, you have to know कि I'm giving it to the right person. मैं delegate कर रहा हूँ, is the person trained to handle that responsibility? Is he trustworthy, he or she trustworthy? All those things. Then you delegate, but also square the circle. Keep checking up with them. But I think one of my most pleasant experiences of working as a senior manager was when I had people who were self-motivated. I delegated to them and half an hour once a week catch up. Just half an hour once a week catch up, so you have your, to-do list for next week. I will not bother you for 5 days. After 5 days, we just catch up for 5. And I'll give you a real, again, example. My cousin, he used to work, and I found it. See, I worked, principal was an American company. And my cousin worked with an Indian company, but very professional Indian company. Lala company, but very well-run Lala company. But he gave me an example, and he later worked with an American company. So, he had a, presentation, with a boss. His boss was an American. उसने कहा कि okay, next Thursday, 4 o'clock, we are meeting for the presentation. He told him, 1 week ago, he told him. And next Thursday, 4 o'clock, my cousin was not ready for the presentation. क्यों? उसने कहा, no, then boss called him, क्या हुआ? Why are you not there for the presentation? उसने कहा, अरे, you didn't remind me. The idea is that Indian company he would have told you 4 times. Because Wednesday, tomorrow we are meeting at 4 o'clock for presentation. Here he has told you. He expects you to be there. So I think that's a difference. That people tell you once and then they not bother you. That is the professional company. So I think it's a responsibility on us as well. So, it saves everybody's time if we are more efficient in using our time.
So one curious question comes in my mind. So now you have a friends also, and they are equally talented and everything. But when it comes to their investing style, do you find a lot of flaws despite education, despite smartness?
No, because they are, I tell you, the smartest people I have seen in business also. They are no different in their thought process. Because discipline, there's nothing wrong. But say they are all CEOs, former CEOs, some are still working, but very senior people, and their investment style is no different from anybody else. So I think just because you are successful entrepreneur doesn't make you a good investor. So investment is different. So you must give it to a professional. And I find that because you are a good entrepreneur, a great businessman. And I saw it in 2007, one of the largest businessmen with thousands of crores. I mean, they tried to do things on their own. And their thought process after the crisis happened, they were exactly the same, behaving like a retail investor. So very smart businessman doesn't make you a good investor.
What's your definition of life well lived?
No, I think, okay, it depends. There's no right answer, wrong answer. For me, it is my children do better than I. I think, which means you've been a good parent, you've spent time with them, you've given them good values, so all those things. If your children do better than you, I think that's yours. I think you are succeeded, really.
You answered my that question. How do you define success?
No, I think that is it. You really, And yesterday, I mean, okay, some friends, IIM friends met yesterday. And one guy said, okay, I am happy. I don't have, no glasses. I don't wear glasses. He's 61. He said, I don't wear glasses. I don't have a prostate problem. I don't take BP medicine. He said, I'm happy. I'm successful. So it depends. So he says, I think he's made enough money. He says, I don't need to, of course, work again. Enough money for me. His children are doing very well. So I am successful. It depends. So no health problems. I sleep in 3 seconds. He said, I sleep in 3 seconds when I go to bed. So that is his definition of success. It depends. So generally, yes. I think money is not there. Most people, you need money. First of all, let me not say money is important. But it's overall, money is one part of the equation. Overall, other things I think matter.
So I carried that. I think I like your definition in terms of your kids should do better than you. It means as a parent.
No, I have seen parents who are so happy. And we met yesterday, some two people whose kids are both in the U. I mean, they've generally done very well. In all, a great champion swimmer, champion cricketer, plus IIT, and working in a consultancy company. So all these guys, so all round, well developed, and they feel so happy.
I think we can keep talking, and I think I have to keep learning basically. But I really appreciate for your time, and thank you for your such a nicely wisdom.
Thanks, Anup. Thank you.